On the tip of Cornwall in southwest England, the small town of Hale was little known outside the United Kingdom. That is, until the start of the first Industrial Revolution over 200 years ago. It's estimated that 80% of the world's steam-powered pump engines were made in Hale. The explanation was the demand from the nearby Cornish tin mines. But with the internal combustion engine and the closure of most of the mines, demand slumped, and by the middle of the 20th century, the town had fallen back into obscurity. Today, the town is planning for a revival, using its heritage as a basis for creating new jobs. It's largely due to the efforts of the Prince's Regeneration Trust. Founded in 2006, the Prince's Regeneration Trust and its predecessor, established a decade before, has created over 1,000 jobs. Instrumental to this work is its projects director, Fred Taggart.
This was the centre of Cornwall's pumping engine industry. This was truly a crucible of the Industrial Revolution.
Built at Hale in 1856, this steam engine was made to pump water. Each stroke drawing more than 1,000 litres, that's 16 million litres per day. It was once one of the most powerful machines on the planet. This engine was one of many designed and built in Hale by Harvey's, a company that was among the pantheon of early industrial pioneers.
It's part, perhaps, of our forgotten industrial history, but in the middle of the 19th century, Harvey's engines were pumping almost all the water that was being drunk in London. I think the town deserves better than it's had. Its history has been forgotten, and now, thank goodness, is being understood again. Its importance, not just to Cornwall, not just to England, but actually across the world.
Hale saw the construction of the world's largest ever steam engine, used to pump the water out of Holland's Haarlem Lake. And it was here in Hale that Isambard Kingdom Brunel oversaw the construction of the giant cast links for his Bristol Clifton suspension bridge. The company not only built the most advanced pumping engines of the time, but also the ships required to get them to customers across the world, from South America to Australia.
The point just in front of us would have been the core of the industrial area. Harvey's foundry would have stretched all the way out there, and that's where Harvey built his ships. All gone, but the walls are all still there, and you can still see where things did happen in the past.
With the decline in steam power, Harvey's foundry closed in 1903, and the town never fully recovered. 10 years ago, there were high levels of unemployment, and the last surviving buildings of its proud past were derelict and on the point of collapse.
Britain is losing its heritage buildings at an alarming rate, and I think it's really only in the last 10 years that people realise that if we don't do something, we will lose most of them and the best of them, and that actually it is entirely possible to reuse these buildings and repurpose them for the uses of the 21st century. They represent our inheritance, and we're reinventing them.
Laura Christen is the project development manager for the site. Her main job is to make sure that the legacy of the preservation work will be a thriving community in Hale.
They'd had a sort of quite a single focus just to save the buildings and possibly build a heritage centre, but what they really needed was to turn into a community development organisation.
Volunteers from the community were set to work building a social history archive to highlight the contributions made by workers at the site.
There's not many buildings left in Hale, so it's all about the story. Now, the families like the Ellis family and the Harveys, they have books produced about themselves, but they're quite biased, because obviously if you're going to have a book written about your family, you know, and it's all, you don't want certain things to be revealed. But what we've been able to do with the archive is get the real kind of social history of the actual people who really worked here, the people who worked on the foundry, on the shipyards. We've got loads of old newspapers, the Cornish arms and the Hale Times and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was the brewery office as it stood. Literally 3 walls and a piece of tarpaulin were holding it together.
Newly renovated buildings were rented to new businesses to help bring life back to the foundry farm.
The businesses that we've got like marketing companies, software companies, we've got sort of designers, we've got a sort of Cornish fashion label in there, all sorts of people.
A company making saxophones has moved in.
It's a really nice environment to work in. It's not like your average high street. You've got nice views. A lot of customers really like it, and everyone who comes in says, wow, what a lovely building it is and how beautiful.
A landscape photography business is another attracted by the ambience of the old foundry farm.
The first time we walked into the office, especially with the wooden floors and high eaves, we realised that it was just going to be a really good place to work.
I think the triumph is that of local people who've recognised that this was an opportunity for Hale and was important. This site now is part of a World Heritage Site, not because architecturally it's great, but because of what people did here, the engines that they built, the contribution they made to technology, the contribution they made to the Industrial Revolution. That is world class.